remembering that it's April.
That's terrible.
Or believing that it's
April. It takes me a couple of days to do that because I just can't believe the days. The year's already a quarter old. I can't believe it. Okay, so it is April, right? April 4th.
Don't forget
That's right.
tax
Gary
time.
Nolan got us good the other day, so we know it's April.
Yeah, that's right. It is April. I want to get my kite out. It's great kite weather. You like kites? I love kites.
Maybe when I was 4.
Oh, I love. There's something beautiful about big kites and their long tail. I just love kites.
And my experience with kites lately is like running, throwing them in the air. My kids looking disappointed. I don't know how to fly kites.
Love kites.
That was always the worst. I could never get it in the air, and then I just get frustrated.
We have lots going on. On the local front, boy, there was a late-night filibuster. Did it ever stop, Stephanie? I don't know. I went to sleep finally.
I think like 10 o'clock. I every time I tuned in sometime in the evening, I think Senator Coleman was reading some sort of book. I missed the beginning, so I wasn't quite sure what book she was reading.
So she was filibustering a bill filed by Rick Bratton trying to change the landfill rules. I know we talked about it a few weeks ago. We'll talk about it again, where that's going, what it is. It's an interesting topic. It's sort of an interesting governance philosophy. Biden, Sanders trying to spike the ball, going to save you some out-of-pocket money on inhalers, and a lot of you do have or know someone who has respiratory problems. They basically strong-armed the pharma and the manufacturers into limiting out-of-pocket on 3 of the 4 big manufacturers on some of those inhalers. It can get expensive. And hundreds and hundreds of Mexican immigration agents are seen being bussed into Juarez in and around. So our conspiracy hat wearers, including yours truly, are saying, you know, what happened during that $20 million extortion meeting between the Mexican president and Antony Blinken a couple of weeks ago? Did Biden indeed pay the ransom? I don't know. As we see the polls begin to tighten up after the State of the Union, you're going to see Biden start to tack towards showing what he can do to make things right just in time for the election. We'll see whether or not that happens. But there is some news over on westbound I-70, one lane of westbound I-70. This is east of Columbia. So if you're driving westbound east of Columbia, expect some delays this morning. A tractor-trailer rolled over overnight near the 133-mile marker. That's near Lake of the Woods. And so left lane of westbound I-70 is open. The right lane is closed. Be careful. Cosmo from Y107 reports the tractor-trailer's cab is facing eastbound. So we'll see. A female motorist suffered some moderate injuries, apparently.
That's going to cause some problems here in the next hour or so if it's not already.
Is there a good workaround if you're coming westbound, coming into town from, Jonesburg or somewhere? I don't know.
Well, you get on the outer road, and all of a sudden, as we know, when you get to a lot of the creeks that go across I-70, a lot of those outer roads just end abruptly.
That's right.
So you don't know if you don't know where you're going in the dark on the outer road, watch it.
They do. They just stop. Yeah. Okay, so be careful out there. And if you see anything, let us know. If you see something, text something. I think we're going to do a little play on a famous phrase. 573-874-9390, but don't do it while you're driving. It is illegal to text and drive, right? It's illegal to even have your handset in your hand and talk and drive now, correct? But they're not enforcing it.
Technically, yes.
Has anyone changed their habits? Has anyone really changed their habits?
Well, I can, in my steering wheel, I have built in the little button for voice commands. So.
Well, look at you, fancy pants.
Well, and my car's not even that new, right? Do
you use it?
Yeah.
You don't use it?
No.
Yeah. I like using. I've got the little bone-conducting headphones called Shocks. They're great. For those of you who have hearing assist devices and you can't put like an AirPod in your ears, you can buy these. They're called Shocks, S-H-O-K-Z.
You drive with those in?
You can because it lets you hear ambient sound.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
so it's a safe thing, because if you have AirPods in, you can't hear ambient sound. It's really nice. I use them at the office because I can,
When you don't lose one.
No, that's the different. Those are the hearing assist devices.
Oh.
These things, I'll have to show them to you. They're very cool.
I get a call from Randy one day a few weeks ago. Semi-panicked. More sad than anything.
Never panicked.
Going, hey, did I drop anything in the studio? Have you found anything? I probably dropped it in a parking lot somewhere, but can you just take a look around?
We came by after Lent service that night and looked around in the parking lot. I couldn't find. Guess where it was? It was under a little
in
shelf
your ear.
On our bar. No, underneath the bar somehow. I don't know how that happened.
Wow.
Our bar is right off the kitchen, and It's a place where everything just piles up, and instead of a bar, it's a repository for the day's newspapers and papers and all that. Everyone has a place like that in their home, don't they?
I certainly do.
Do you?
Where
That's
the car
good to hear.
keys end up, and then you can't find them.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and then it's a big panic, right? Hey, but we do need to launch into some things because there are things happening. This filibuster, this bill, last year it almost froze the Senate, didn't it? And now it's doing it again this year.
I thought this was somewhat new, but we have heard about it so far this year, and it's about the landfill bill.
Yeah, the landfill bill.
Yeah, and so somebody bought a piece of property, and according to the current rules, they should be able to build a landfill on that.
Yeah.
The neighbors don't like it, so they're proposing new rules that now I think would only apply in the Kansas City area. That would allow, I think, like the locals more of a veto over whether they could have a landfill there. And so there are like various Twitter accounts popping up about kill the fill, but for me, it's a really interesting issue because it gets back to that kind of NIMBY stuff. Mm-hmm. And we heard a lot yesterday early on in the debate about private property rights. And you think about the people who bought that property with an intent, and, then to have the government come in and say, you can't do that with the property that you own. That's tough for a lot of conservatives. At the same time, the people who are in the neighborhood nearby have
it's an upscale neighborhood too.
Yeah, and they certainly, are worried about their own property values should a landfill go in. It's tough, and we see those issues right around here. We've seen it a little bit with Columbia's proposal to build certain homeless shelters. When the neighbors kind of rise up, we saw it. There were some neighbor issues in Ashland.
Jefferson City went through it with the talk about potential for workplace housing. Same kind of deal.
Yeah.
And where have those traditionally ended up? Do the people win, or does the developer win?
I think it's all over the map.
The one in Kansas City was out there on the southern end of Kansas City where it hits Raymore, if anybody knows Raymore, Peculiar, that whole area out there. And it was what the point was a Creekmore golf course, and they've got a community there, and it was potentially going to butt up to that. And these are $1 million homes, some of those. So, yes, big boys there who were not happy with this whole proposed development. But I know it cleared the initial vote in the House. And then it's kind of jammed up on the Senate side, like Steph said.
Well, go figure.
Yeah. Well, and for example, one of the neighbor issues we had in Ashland was Lakeside Ashland. And there, the developer got the project, got the movie theater. There are still neighbors there who I believe are unhappy still to this day. But my position on it was, you bought a piece of property. When you buy that, you are expected to know what you're buying. And yeah, it was quieter, but you were 200-300 yards from a major highway, and the property next to you was zoned general commercial. And so you're kind of expected to have the knowledge of that. Right. And, a movie theater that operates only in the summer on the weekends is much better than a truck stop, a hotel, many other things that would have been permitted in general commercial. And so, I assume similarly here, that landfill property is zoned in a way that's legal. And so, whenever people come to me with these problems, my question is always, what do we have currently existing that would prohibit that they're violating? If we haven't put that in place, why would we make a special exception now to put that in place? And I'll be honest, we had a vote on some sort of marijuana factory thing in Ashland, and it's pretty close to my neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And personally, do I really want something like that super close to my neighborhood? Not really.
The one over in Kansas City, I know the issue on Mike Hafner's bill over on the House side was the way, I think, if I remember, the way that the state law was set up, you couldn't put in a landfill, get a permit for a landfill within a half a mile of a community unless the community signed off on it.
Right.
And I think Hafner's bill wants to increase that to a mile.
To a mile. That's what Bratton's bill is.
And that's kind of where I came down on the marijuana thing. I looked around and it's not violating anything. The state put in a buffer. It meets the buffer. I don't really have, then I'm just those people who are like, I don't want that near me, and I just,
And apparently the developer, KC Recycle and Waste Solutions, has hired a dozen or more lobbyists, and the people have hired a bunch of lobbyists. But I guess I would ask the question simply, and it would close the debate. If they'd let me get on the floor, I'd just say, how many of you like sports? Everyone would raise their hand. and you say, okay, it's fourth down. It's the fourth quarter of the Super Bowl. Fourth down, a minute left to go, and you got a yard to go. 4th and 1, and you're in the end zone when you win the game. And the ref says, stop, hold it, nope. We're going to move the end zone back, and now you have to make it past the end line of the end zone. Those are the new rules. So
now,
everyone would go, you got to be kidding me. You can't change the rules in the middle of the game.
Now, I would go even differently than that, and that's not where I thought you were going, but I thought, how many of you like sports? Okay, what if instead of a landfill, we decide to put a stadium there? And no matter how much they like sports, they'd say, no, we don't want a stadium there. And that's what I've heard from people in Ashland who didn't want Lakeside Ashland. It wasn't, we don't like the movie theater. It's that I want that property to have nothing forever.
Right.
Because it's too close to my house, which that's not an answer.
Actually,
Stephanie, remember when they built the new Helias Stadium for Helias Catholic High School?
Yes.
And that's a real landlocked neighborhood right there. And it butted up right to literally some of the homes there, and they bought the homes off people and tore them down. Now, a lot of the folks that were across the street weren't really crazy about it.
And that certainly happened. I just point out, John, that's a very good point, to Randy and to Stephanie. You guys are missing one very important thing here. One very important thing. The neighbors have two very powerful allies in Mark Alford and Emmanuel Cleaver. And when you have a Republican congressman and a Democrat, they don't want this. They're hearing an earful from their constituents. So basically, the two congressmen who don't agree on practically anything, essentially have told the landfill people, move the thing or move it away. They don't want, because their constituents don't want it. So you do have a congressional role here as well, and while that's not getting a lot of media attention, they're hearing an earful. So I think that's significant. If it was just Emmanuel Cleaver saying it, this is Mark Alford as well. They'd like this thing moved out a little bit.
But their constituents don't want it. No one else's constituents want it either. So where do you
Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders in a big spike the ball appearance yesterday up in D.C. That's part of the daily D.C. rundown, right, Steph?
Yeah, I mean, you're in healthcare, Randy. Have they made major shifts? Are people coming to you and saying, man, I just can't believe how little I'm paying for my prescription drugs?
Everyone's wanting to donate to their campaign because of that Inflation Reduction Act, the insulin reduction, and they strong-armed through an investigation of Bernie Sanders' committee. They strong-armed 3 of the 4 drug manufacturers to lower the out-of-pocket cost to $35 on what can be very expensive inhalers. But it's like the government's going to decide when you're greedy and when you're not, and next they're going to come for maybe your trolley company. I don't know,
and you're still paying crazy prices for everything else. I mean, they're not addressing the root of the problem. We can get into healthcare costs again. We spent a lot of time yesterday, but in prescription drug prices. But that's not the only thing. I mean, they took a victory lap on a whole bunch of other topics as well, which was just crazy to me.
And then Joe tried to take a victory lap, and we're not sure what happened here.
And the mechanisms the mechanisms attached to the inhaler.
That's a tough one.
Right.
That's a tough one. We are getting word about the strategic oil reserves. Gas prices are really high, and although the market's doing okay, and people are saying the economy's okay, it's really bad for you if you're on the ballot and the gas prices are in the the average. I think nationwide is almost $3.50, which is not great.
Analysts are predicting north of $4 by summer. Well, because sooner or later he is going to have to replace the strategic oil reserve. He's put it on hold because of the price of gas. After, in political pandering, he drained it. Sure. Now what do? We don't have the security. And when you have to bite the bullet and
drill,
replace
baby,
it,
drill.
There you go.
Well, we'll continue to watch that. I know even around mid-Mo, the prices have shot up in the last week. Also, we're expecting Congress to come back in. There is no consensus on the Ukraine aid, so we're expecting that to be a hot topic. But also, this was also kind of hanging around. We've got the impeachment articles against Mayorkas coming over to the Senate. What we're hearing is that Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer plans to either dismiss those charges or table them, and so they're likely going nowhere.
But that hasn't happened in a forever, right? That's a very rare thing and disrespectful to the process. And hypocritical, isn't it? I mean, to just table it, I think that's not the way it's supposed to work.
Well, I think the Democrats' response would be that,
deal
that's
with it.
that's not like that he shouldn't have been impeached in the first place. Randy eye rolls.
That's going to come back to hurt them.
I think you're right. I think you are right.
It's going to come back to hurt them because people in the middle, one thing about the people in the middle, it's things like that, those power grabs, that I think it really gets under their skin. I could be wrong, but that's why they'll go from one side to another depending on the election cycle.
Well, we talked about it earlier today already, is when you change the rules, right? Or change the process.
That's right.
And so here, if you don't let the process play out and instead you kind of play games and change the rules, I think even people who might disagree with you on the merits are like, everyone should play by the same rules.
They love the process when it serves their purposes, right?
True.
And then they just trash it. And there's also, maybe later on we can talk, there's apparently this Alvin Bragg trial. This thing's going to happen very an accident that's tangling up things over near Lake of the Woods on I-70. So if you're driving westbound on I-70, east of Columbia there, a tractor trailer rolled over, and there is one lane that's closed. I guess the right lane is closed. Now, this was right before showtime, Brian's reporting. We'll have to see what happens. But if you know anything, let us know. I haven't checked the text here recently, Hannah. Is anyone commenting on whether there's clearing or not? But if you see things better or worse, let us know so we can keep you informed on that.
About a half hour ago, we were getting reports that they do have the one lane open, like we said,
Right.
and that there were no backups, like no traffic backups. I do imagine as folks start to get out and about and head to work, that might change. But if you're passing through the area and want to give us an update, please shoot us a text at 874-9390.
So one listener says the wreck is east of Route Z exit, okay? Some traffic slowly moving. Shocks headphones are the best ever. I have no financial interest. I had just heard about them, and I think they're pretty cool. It's not like having...
Explain how they work again, because I'm not
It's not
there
like
yet.
having AirPods, but it's good. They work with bone conduction. So they basically go here to the side, in front of your ear, just like little regular headphones. I'll bring them in. I have them out in the car. I'll bring them in. And they just go here, and so you hear it through your bone.
So do they sit on your ear instead of in your ear?
No, in front of your ear, on your bone.
I got to see this.
Okay, I'll bring them in. You feel
It's old technology, really.
Yeah. I sort of feel like Jean-Luc Picard in Star Trek. It's like remember the Borg when they put.
Did you really just ask Stephanie if she remembers something about Star Trek?
No.
Look at her face right now and tell me if she's ever watched Star Trek.
You're a self-proclaimed nerd. I thought a lot of nerds
I'm not
like
that
Star
nerdy.
No,
I draw the line somewhere.
I love Star Trek. Oh,
Stephanie, you will be assimilated.
Resistance is futile.
There you go.
Make it so.
See, this is why you should be watching us on YouTube Live, because
The eye rolling is amazing.
Stephanie's face immediately was like, no, I don't remember that.
Matt Nichols, our friend from CPOA, says there's some traffic slowly moving westbound. John says you do not want a landfill for a neighbor. Talk about killing your property value. Stinks, trash everywhere, major truck traffic, and zoning never changes. Okay. NIMBY grows exponentially along with population, and yet politicians crave growth. Okay, 10 minutes ago, both lanes were blocked. Two big tow trucks were trying to clear the road. So that's a dynamic situation, and if there is a way around it, you might want to think about that. We'll let you know as things clear. So remember when President Manuel Labrador, right, or Obrador.
Yes.
Labrador is the retriever. He's
the tail wagging the border.
He's the Obrador retriever. He's the Obrador retriever, and he wanted to make money by basically saying, President Biden, because it was Blinken that met with him, President Biden, you give us $20 billion a year to poor countries in Latin America and the Caribbean, lift sanctions on Venezuela, the Cuban embargo, and legalize millions of law-abiding Mexicans in the U.S., and yeah, we'll do a little bit a better job on our side of the border. And everyone was like, what is this? The Mexican president, Manuel López Obrador. He's gonna extort $20 billion a year from you and me and everyone here. Really? I think, obviously Trump didn't like that. He reacted to it. But now, all of a sudden, Todd Bensman, remember Todd has done a lot of on-the-ground reporting for our friends at Centers for Immigration Studies, and he's saying something is happening here. He's tweeting, and he's got a video of all kinds of little vans holding 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 immigration officers, Mexican immigration officers, and they're bringing them in by the hundreds, he says, hundreds and hundreds to Juarez on the Mexican side of the border. Something's up. So why would they suddenly start doing that?
Fishy.
Blinken said, we'll find a way to get you that money, wink, wink. Keep our president in. This reminds me, remember when Barack said on a hot mic to the president, not Putin, but to the president then of Russia, like, hey, make sure I get reelected, and then we'll make sure and take care of those weapons. I think it was about silos in Eastern Europe or something, right? So, I mean, I tell you, you just can't. I'm so disappointed that Mark Alford and Emmanuel Cleaver would be like all in for changing the rules, and this developer is left with a parcel of land. Why does that bother me?
$1 million homeowners just next door. I think that speaks volumes.
So if there were $200,000 homeowners, which this day doesn't buy you much home, sadly. But I mean, if you had a couple $100,000 homeowners, people that lived in starter homes, maybe 1,200 square foot, 1,400 square foot homes with, a couple, 2-3 bedrooms and a couple baths.
That's why they're like, put that landfill over by the trailer park.
Yeah.
Which, why is that fair?
That's just.
It's tough. And you think about like when you change the rules mid-game too, like typically you would grandfather people. So yeah, like do I have a problem whether it's a half mile or a mile? As a public policy matter, I think maybe a mile makes sense.
Right.
Like, I don't know, a half mile seems kind of short, but these people are already way down the line. And so typically if you would do that in the middle of a process, you would say, okay, a half mile for everyone before, but going forward from this day forward, a mile. So it wouldn't solve the current problem typically. Right. So now we're going to kind of quote unquote retroactively make it a mile. It's just
let's do some armchair quarterback legislating. Okay, couldn't they in some way, in some place, maybe even with this is already an established community, but let's say you had a mobile home court or you had some isolated pocket there, or find some other area and do an eminent domain thing, take really good care of the people that, because this could be considered potentially sort of like the concentrated animal finishing operations where they put a bunch of hogs in a barn and the effluent from the air and the water stinks and it's full of bacteria.
I think CAFOs got brought up yesterday, yes.
Yeah, but I mean, so yeah, you're right. Either grandfather people in and say, sorry, the rules are what the rules are, or find an eminent domain option and try to negotiate something there.
And there's another option, and this is where I went back to, that the land was there, it was for sale at some point, right? Mm-hmm. And, I moved into a house, and I get it, like not everyone has this ability, and that's fine. It sounds like these people do, so I'm going to pick on them for a minute. But, and I found out there was an empty lot next to me, not a very big lot, and it made me really nervous. And I found out that the developer still owned it. And I'm like, man, if they slap a house down on that property, it's going to be right on top of me and I'm going to be really unhappy. Mm-hmm. So what did I do? I went out and I paid the price and paid for the lot. And now guess who gets to control that lot?
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah, right.
And so it sounds like these $1 million homeowners who apparently have a landfill within half a mile of their nice subdivision could have gotten together and purchased this lot and put a nice community garden or a park or something else on that. And guess what? Guess who gets to control that land now? You do.
That's right.
So quit talking about how nice your house is and how much money you have and
put your golf course
and put your money where your mouth is.
Good
and
idea.
Buy the dang property. And then guess what? You're in charge.
Stephanie, I have an idea. You sell me the lot next to your house so that I can put a house on there.
No.
And then we can just be together forever.
Oh, that's sweet. I mean, yeah, it gives me a lot of, I could have a mother-in-law's house or something.
A producer Hannah house.
We also have HOA. I mean, during the pandemic and even now, I've tried to sell my husband on, how how much our house is worth? We could just build a tiny house or put it, and live on the extra land in an RV and sell our regular house.
Tiny house, 3 kids and 2 adults. That sounds
fun. My husband looked me dead in the face and was like, you would never live in a your makeup can't fit in a tiny house.
I was going to say your closet is larger than most tiny houses.
Yeah. So, but I can be frugal when I want to be, and I could sacrifice for a couple of years because I figure, I mean, if Biden gets reelected, he's going to tank all of our markets and the real estate is going to drop out, I think. So.
Well, all the growth that we've seen out there, and we were talking, this is Raymore where it is, but Raymore, Peculiar, I had family, I guess I still do, have family in Grandview. And we've watched all that growth out there south of Kansas City and all. It's not like it was initially where you put in a landfill out there and the only guy who might get upset was a hog farmer 2 miles down the road. This is really a growth area in the Kansas City metro.
And then it's just, where do you draw the line? Because today it's a landfill. Tomorrow it's a car processing, a car lot, or, some of these recycled car things.
Like a salvage yard?
Yeah, salvage yard. Tomorrow, it's a marijuana thing, the list goes on. And then essentially what you're doing is you're preventing, again, I'll go back to, the answer is they don't want anything on that property. And that's not a good use.
You're right. So if you're so wealthy, collectively get together, buy a parcel of land, and put in a frisbee golf course, right? I mean, do
Sure.
something like that.
Yeah.
And then that would be a buffer zone. It's sort of interesting, though. Is there really that big of a difference between a half a mile and mile, other than it catches within the net then of municipal approval? That's
Depends
what this
on
is
the
about.
prevailing winds, I would say.
Yeah, well, I think that would just involve then a catchment area that would then allow the municipality to, right? Because this falls just beyond a half
Build
mile.
a wall. There's got to be a solution, I would think, right?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I don't know that you. Maybe we need to get the developer and some of the community leaders in. Have some marijuana gummies or have some beer or stuff, and have them have a negotiating session. And have them sit down and talk to one another.
And that's the problem with land use. And I mean, with like, say you're disputing over money, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I want $100,000. You want to pay me zero. We can come to a number somewhere in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
There either is a landfill or there's not a landfill.
Yeah.
There's no, and so that's why these land use things are so hard. And then once it's built, it's not going away. And so there's always a winner and a loser, and there's very little room for compromise.
Yeah.
I would say in some instances, you can do variances, you can deal with height or vision, or you can, like with Lakeside Ashland, there's some noise parameters and there are hours of operation. And so there were some limitations that you can put on a development or an operation that kind of tries to protect the nearby landowners. But in a lot of ways, it's a winner take all, or.
Well, that's not exactly analogous, but when we were looking around at Columbia and looking to move here, we bought a property that, I mean, airplanes, the airport is south and east of us, right? By, 4 or 5 miles. And so we were aware that as things expand, that may impact us. But we weighed that and we thought, okay, but all net, it's still a good move. That may be a little downside, potentially up the road, but yeah. So, I mean, you do sort of look around you and look at where things are, right?
And you are offended by the airplanes?
Darn right, I don't like airplane noise.
Just take out your hearing devices and you'll be fine.
Yeah, I used to live.
No zoning.
I used to live
what
over on the west side of Jeff City, close to the river, in what I like to call the River Hood near Hazleton, and you could hear the trains all night long.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of like an Atlas Shrugged, like
Oh
the
my
world
God,
keeps
don't go
moving, the
there.
airplanes type thing. Where it just like it always feels like it makes me feel small, like that. There are people flying every morning at 5 a.m. to go do important things out of Columbia, Missouri, and it feels like the engine of the world is turning, and I'm excited.
Do you
See,
think?
living in small towns that have lots of, railroads running through them, hearing the train kind of sounds like home, right? Like, I don't even think twice
it's
about
like
it.
me. It's only a half mile from my house.
I don't.
I love the sound of trains at night.
My dad, for a while growing up, lived in a mobile home literally across Highway 22 from the train tracks. And so when we first moved in there, it used to wake me up every night when the train would roll through. And eventually you just get used to it. Yep. And now in California, they have tracks that go right through town. And we always hear it. And it's like a joke in the family. We all yell, train!
I was so excited when we were just in Colorado at Winter Park, and they've got a train that comes right there through the resort, and it's like romantic and lovely.
Until I get stuck waiting on it.
That's true.
And when I'm trying to go to work.
We now know Stephanie Bell has just let us know into a secret. She aspires to be Dagny Taggart from Atlas Shrugged. Yeah, and that fits with the trolley narrative. After all, there you go. She wants to be a locomotive mogul, right? You want to be a train mogul.
Let's get it.
There you go. All right, you're gonna
Me
build
and Joe Biden and our Amtrak. I do quite like the Amtrak.
And Chris is your Hank, right? He's got to develop Bob Onder, who is, of course, according to a lot of the polls, the leading candidate in that race, and a colleague of mine, joins us now, being a doctor colleague, certainly on many counts, no colleague of mine when it comes to his law degree either. So we have a lot to talk about. Bob, how you doing?
Good morning, Randy. It's good to be back.
Thanks for joining us, Bob. I wanted to get you on to talk about your reaction and your gathering of endorsements and how things are going in that realm.
Well, Randy, we are excited. My reaction to that endorsement, look, there's only one endorsement that really matters, which is the endorsement of the Republican primary voters of our district on August 6th, and I look forward to receiving that endorsement. We have a lot of support throughout this district. There's a lot of discussion. Is this a central Missouri district, or is it, does the population balance toward the east? Look, I plan to win every single county in the 3rd Congressional District, and I think I will, because this is a race that pits it's a classic race of a movement conservative, a Trump delegate to the Republican National Convention twice, steadfast conservative in myself, versus a self-described moderate to liberal, at one time pro-choice, government lawyer turned lobbyist. Do you want a movement conservative, a MAGA conservative, or do you want a person who is a creature of the swamp? So I think the voters overwhelmingly will choose the former, and I look forward to being one of Donald Trump's reinforcements come January of next year.
And Bob, as a former state senator yourself and a leading, you were a leader in the Senate. You had excellent numbers when it came to conservative, ratings in various places, and had a lot of endorsements in that realm. Have you thus far received any endorsements from, the Right to Life people or any other groups, NRA or so forth?
Yeah, it's early. And as your listeners may know, I was, before Blaine Luetkemeier's retirement, I was looking at running for lieutenant governor. Missouri Right to Life gave me its exclusive endorsement in that race. And I cannot speak for Missouri Right to Life, but I would point out that I was one of the architects of the two major pro-life bills that passed in 2017 and 2019. My opponent used to describe himself as pro-choice and being okay with the Roe versus Wade status quo. But it's a little early for those endorsements. I will say that sometimes moderate to liberal Republicans like to talk in terms of, quote, getting things done versus making headlines. I will tell you, without me and the work of the conservatives in the Missouri legislature, and it was a team effort, we would not have had the heartbeat bill. We would not have had two major tax cuts. We would not have had constitutional carry or the Second Amendment Preservation Act or the election integrity bill that included voter ID and banned Zuckerbucks. When moderates talk about getting things done, they talk about the kind of reckless fiscal policies that have gotten us to the $35 trillion debt that's going to burden our kids and our grandkids for decades to come. So, we want to get things done. We want to turn around the D.C. swamp. We want the D.C. swamp to listen to the people of Missouri and our district, not get things done, meaning going along with whatever Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi want to get done.
Doc, you referenced the Missouri Stands for the Unborn Act, and I think back to that session, I think it was 2019 when you were on the air with us. And when that passed on the Senate side, I remember you and Bill Eigel were happy it passed, but not that crazy about the watered-down version that made it through. Do you see parallels with the debate over IP and the whole abortion issue this session?
Oh, I see a lot of parallels there. That's a good point. What happened in 2019? Ultimately, of course, it was the heartbeat bill. It contained a trigger provision that made Missouri an abortion-free state. But at the time, Roe versus Wade still stood. Yep. So what happened is a bunch of milquetoast moderate Republicans got together with the Democrats and the Planned Parenthood lawyers, and they removed all the provisions that would anyway mess with the Planned Parenthood business model back then in 2019. So why would a pro-life Republican consent to taking out the unborn, the Infant Born Alive Protection Act out of that bill? That was removed. There were provisions about fetal tissue accountability to protect against organ trafficking by abortion clinics, and there was evidence that that was going on in the major abortion clinic in our state. So this is what happens when moderates get together to, quote, get things done. What that usually means is selling out, acquiescing to Democrats like Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer. Look, Missouri does not want to send a Liz Cheney moderate to liberal Republican to Congress. Missouri wants to send a movement conservative, a MAGA conservative, who will join Donald J. Trump next January in taking back our country.
Now, an issue that's been bogging down the Missouri Senate in the last 24 hours is this landfill, kill the fill issue. And I do think it's a really interesting issue because you've got, private property rights, and you've got folks, who really don't want this landfill. And we've had congressmen, as Brian pointed out this morning, weighing in, both Emanuel Cleaver and Congressman Mark Alford weighing in on the landfill issue. How would you approach that issue, or have you been paying attention to the debate? What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the exact details of this bill, but I will tell you, when government takes a piece of basically rural farmland or zoned residential property, commercial zoned residential property, and turns it into the highest, most offensive use, which is turning something into a landfill, and does it just blocks away from residential homes. I don't look at that. That's not a property rights issue per se. It's not like a farmer wanting to build a pole barn on his property or till an extra 50 acres of soybeans. This is, and basically you have Democrat politicians in the city of the city of Kansas City getting together with this landfill developer and putting the landfill out very close to residential neighborhoods. So I really do believe those residents in Cass County should have a say in whether that happens.
Bob, before we move into some other issues around Missouri and how, if you were elected, you would potentially try to help, address those issues of Missourians on the national level. Brian Hauswirth has a question for you. We're talking with Bob Onder here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri, candidate for Congressional District Number 3 to replace Blaine Luetkemeyer.
Yeah, Randy, thank you. Am I okay? Thank you so much, Randy and Stephanie, as well. Senator, we appreciate you joining us. We did report yesterday, and we had a live interview with State Senator Mary Elizabeth Coleman, and she announced last week, we had her on yesterday, that she is withdrawing from District 3 and is running for the Secretary of State. She believes she has a clear path to win that. She made that very clear, and we've reported that. So it's still an looking at your race, an eight-way GOP primary. Mary Elizabeth Coleman out of it right now, running for Secretary of State. You got Arnie Dienoff, you got McNell, you've got Bone, you've got Wilkinson, you got Senator Schaefer, Representative Hicks, and a gentleman named Bruce Bowman from Jefferson City. I don't know who that is, a political unknown. Senator, 7 opponents. She's out of the race. Can you win this?
Oh, yes. I think I am going to win this race, as Randy alluded to. I am the front runner. This is the first election I've ever filed for where I started as the front runner. But I think the reason is that your listeners, from my many, many years speaking to them from my position in Jefferson City as a state senator, fighting for conservative principles, fighting for Missouri's values, folks in central Missouri know me very well. And, of course, the area that I've represented in St. Charles County, folks know me very well there. And there are other candidates, and I've gotten to know some of these other candidates. There are some good people in this race, but I think it will really come down to a straightforward, conservative, Donald Trump supporting, Second Amendment supporting, pro-life supporting conservative Republican running against a Liz Cheney moderate to liberal Republican. And, look, I love the city of Columbia. I love our flagship university, Mizzou. But a guy who in the Missouri Senate thought he was representing the woke college professors, not the rural people of central Missouri who actually got him elected. I think there's a clear contrast here in our records, and I think there's no question that if we get our message out, the people of central Missouri and throughout the 3rd Congressional District will choose the conservative, not the Liz Cheney Democrat-leaning Republican.
I want to follow up on that very quickly, and I think I want to make sure that you are referencing Senator Schaefer when you said a former state senator who happens to be in this race. You reference a senator at the time who was representing woke professors, comparing him to Liz Cheney. I want to make sure you are referencing Kurt Schaefer. Is that correct?
Yeah, the government lawyer turned lobbyist, Kurt Schaefer, correct.
Okay. Thank you, Senator.
That's Dr. Bob Onder, who is, of course, in a heated race in a crowded race for Congressional District number 3. And actually, Bob, as I recall, I don't remember the final numbers, but you came real close to being in Blaine Luetkemeier's seat back several cycles ago, right?
Yes, it was a hard-fought race, but Blaine, I believe, had some geographic advantages. His area down by the lake in Miller County came out very, very strong for him, and good for him. I commend Blaine for his service. He and I haven't always agreed on everything, but I really did admire the last few years the way he stood up against woke progressive ESG investing, against Elizabeth Warren's over regulation of his own industry, the banking industry. But yeah, it was a hard fought race, and I've supported Blaine over the years. I've been to many of his events and fundraisers. So no, you always want to support the winner. You want to support the Republican candidate. But I think this is an opportunity at a time when our country is literally in crisis, an opportunity to go to D.C., to make D.C. listen, to work with Donald J. Trump and the Republican majority that, God help us, we have come January, to take back our country, to save our great nation.
Dr. Bob, about out of time, but quick response. What would you do to fix the border if elected?
Yeah, we've got to shut down the border right now. We've got to build the wall. Congress has what people don't always realize is Congress authorized building of a border wall 20 years ago. The amount of money it would take to build the wall, to shut down the border, is minimal. And even without the border wall fully built, Donald Trump had the border shut down at least dramatically more secure than it is today. We need to reverse the Biden open borders policy, because we need to protect people not only from this invasion, but also from the fentanyl that's killed 100,000 Americans a year, and protect those human trafficking victims that are being exploited by the Mexican drug cartels. All those tragedies are in the hands of Joe Biden and the Democrats.
All right, Dr. Bob, hey, we appreciate you being with us, and I know that as the race goes on, you will have other things to say and have other news-making comments, and we certainly invite you to come on and be with us. We enjoyed talking to you, and best of luck as things go forward.
Thank you, Randy.
All righty, there he is, Dr. Bob Onder.
Thank you, Senator. Wow.
Running for Congressional District number 3. You can see this is going to be a contentious race.
does like to be nerdy every once in a while. You misinterpreted that into thinking she was a Star Trek fan.
Well, yeah.
But
those Venn diagrams do overlap somewhat.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
But I have an
He's referencing Venn diagrams, which I also have. I love a Venn diagram.
You and Kamala.
Venn diagrams and like Venn diagram jokes, especially. All right, but back to our regularly scheduled.
Okay, so we were having fun with her being a nerd.
Venn diagram jokes. I can't. Okay, moving on. I have an update on a story that I was nerding out about a few weeks ago. And that is the story of the first successful pig kidney transplant to a human.
Yes.
So the process is called xenotransplantation. And it's something that lots of folks have been working on and researching for many, many years. And the whole purpose is to try to cut down on the organ transplant list, right? Because that list, many people are on it for years and years. And it's really backed up. And there's been this great research done to try to genetically modify pigs and their organs to be used in humans. And we have an update on how that's going. The gentleman who received the pig kidney in Massachusetts, he got to go home. He left the hospital after a 2-week stay, and everything is looking really good. He's no longer having to do dialysis.
Wow.
And he's gotten, all of the required approvals and check marks to go home from the hospital.
Wow.
And as of right now, knock on wood, everything is still looking really well.
And in gesture of gratitude, is it true that he's sworn off bacon?
Okay. That is the one thing when someone says that they're a vegetarian.
Yeah.
Like, have you had bacon?
Yeah, I know.
Have you thought about this all the way through?
On the other hand, well,
George Bush. It wasn't that long. In 5 election cycles in 20 years, all of these illegal immigrants will have children of voting age.
Well, if you don't think that there's an agenda on the part of the progressive left, this Biden regime, to pump up pro-democratic, at a minimum pro-socialist, the government is there to help me kind of voters, because those are the countries they come from. These people are coming up. They're either bringing kids with them. They are going to drop babies here that will be citizens. And Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick of Texas is absolutely right. They were in court yesterday, Stephanie, arguing about this appeals to SB 4 said, hey, we can apprehend these people and deport them. Texas folks can. The Supreme Court, when it was challenged by Biden, said, yes, that's fine. For a brief shining moment, we had some Camelot law there. And then a federal judge struck it down again and put a stay on it. And so now it's back in appeals court. This is the most interesting thing to see how this back and forth goes. Apparently yesterday, I didn't watch all the arguments, but listening to some of the quotes and reading a little bit about it, sounds like the appellate court was at least listening carefully. It didn't seem like they were, hostile to it, to the idea that Texas has a right to do that.
I'm wary of ever reading in too much from court arguments.
Oh, are you?
Okay. But I mean, other people are probably better at it than I am. But yeah, I think it brings up a really good question. I think one that we struggle with all the time, and I'm a states' rights gal, and I think, states should have, and that's the way essentially our country was designed. So, in one way, I want Texas to be able to do whatever the heck it wants, right? But then, you look at, we're kind of talking about then what are states responsible for? You look at this bridge collapse, and is the state going to ask the federal government to pay for it when, and so when you have a problem, there are times when maybe you want the federal government to come in and help you and basically to take over certain areas. And I think there are other times where you say, no, the state should be the leader. And so I think it depends on where you sit and what your current situation is. And we're talking a little bit of two different things. But
no, but I understand.
So I think it's tough for me, and one that, that I think is tough for other conservatives. And I think a lot of it, being in Missouri, we don't have the same issues it's not as in our face as it is in Texas, obviously. But we're it's only a matter of time before it affects all of us, right? And if you're looking at issues that people have brought up, like counting illegals in the census, clearly that's something that should, I think, be raising more red flags, and I think has started to, but would affect all of us.
Well, what about the judges, Steph, that keep circling back to the whole debate over the supremacy clause in the Texas case? And boy, they seem like the judges have come at it from different directions on that angle.
Yeah, I mean, no, I don't know what the outcome is going to be, and I think we struggle with it, and you think about it, we struggle with it not only on the federal side, but also what we've seen in the state house with, how much local control and what areas does the state control versus what areas do our local governments. And the issue with local control is it doesn't always break down conservative and liberal, and we're seeing that play out a little bit now in our state house, whether it be with police, whether it be with how much control should folks have around landfills. I mean, we get into these issues all the time, and especially around land use. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing there at the border issue as well, with the state versus the federal government.
It's interesting the way Texas has engineered these walls that are basically containers end to end, topped with razor wire. And apparently those have been tremendously effective. I'm thinking, wow, Donald Trump, adopt that as your new wall and go at it, man. I mean, what a great partnership that could be between the feds and the state to say, hey, we'll supply the goods. You bring in the guys and gals to make it happen. And look at that. It could be a beautiful thing. And these practical solutions, everyday Americans like us look at this and go, what's wrong with this picture? Because of political infighting and political agendas and quest for power and ambition on the part of the Democrats. And on the other hand, people that want to maintain a sovereign country with as tight a border as you can, for various reasons. I mean, they're never going to get together in what the people overwhelmingly see as a problem, even independents and center left.
Well, and remember how many governors came to the aid of Governor Abbott and stood with him, which was almost unprecedented, to say he's doing the right thing. And so I think, it's crazy to me that we have all this support and that people are still going to walk into that ballot box and probably check the box for Joe Biden, that you could watch what's happening. I mean, it's hard to comprehend.
You talk to folks out of Texas. I mean, we even saw in the midst of this when the governor first pushed SB 4 down there, the not so joking talk about Texas seceding from the Union came back up.
No, yeah. I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, there are people that are so far out there, but somehow their voices get heard. I mean, those are legitimate things in some people's minds that need to be debated, sort of like in Columbia, Missouri. Some people think that you should not have police, or if you have police, they should be social workers. I don't get it. And yet they're not the ones apparently who have suffered either an invasion of their personal property or their real estate or their shop, or they have not had someone that they know or personally been assaulted by someone. We saw this story the other day, and Brian was reporting on it. And John, I think it ended up, and as you said yesterday, down in the Jefferson City Airport, this chase that started out, as best I can tell, it was the 500 block of Conley. I looked up, the Walmart there is listed as 415 Conley. So I'm thinking it has to be in that sort of business shopping mall area.
Yeah,
there.
if the folks know where the Firestone store is, they're right along Conley. That's about the 500 block. I pulled it up on the map.
Okay, right. So another incident in this zone. This is becoming a hot zone for crime. We had the shooting last summer at the Hy-Vee up there near the Bluff area, just around the corner from that strip where the Noodles, love Noodles, and there's a great sushi place next door to there, and the Dollar Tree and Hy-Vee and all that. Okay, then we had the murder at Walmart the other day, and now this. And interesting, I mean, we don't want to say that it's true, but apparently this guy, according to the court documents, did not have a Missouri ID, had a Mexican ID.
Yeah.
Has illegal immigration.
Camdenton. Yeah, and the first one started in the break time parking lot over on East Broadway.
Okay. And
tried to carjack a vehicle with a kid inside. And then the next one happened just minutes later, like you said, over on Conley. And then the guy took off, Lopez. He took off down the road. Troopers, deputies are chasing him 30 miles. Finally caught him at the Jefferson City Airport.
Because there was a bystander apparently that had a gun, right?
Yeah.
And, a citizen, an armed citizen. Court documents indicate a witness saw the beating, grabbed his firearm from his person vehicle, and approached Lopez while holding the firearm in the air. Lopez escaped to his own vehicle and allegedly led numerous, I love this allegedly, led numerous law enforcement officers and Okay, how long have we been beating this drum? We did, John, remember we beat this drum with Representative David Tyson Smith, and we were dismissed when we said, hey, are we going to have some kind of legislation, harsh penalties, mandatory, something to preempt and to basically be a deterrent to illegals who want to become criminals in Missouri? Well, that's not a reality. That's speculation, is what he said. Yeah. It hasn't happened. We'll wait till it happens. Has it? Are we looking at illegal immigration now in our fair town and area?
Sure looks like it, doesn't it?
And okay, here, John is texting us on 573-874-9390. The 16-year-old was supposed to start a job at Walmart right after that shooting. He said, no thanks. Wow.
For sure.
I don't know, ladies and gentlemen. Look, you may be a pro-abortion person, but if you're going to vote for people who don't believe in the government's preeminent role in public safety, both at the border and in our urban and now what is Columbia, a semi-urban community, a rural-urban, hybrid, what are you thinking? I mean, if you're not of abortion consideration age, what are you thinking? I just don't get it. It makes no sense to me the way people are becoming hysterical about voting to kill preborn human beings, and at the same party who does not honor American sovereign borders or America's personal property and personal bodily safety. I don't get it. Someone explain it to me. 573-874-9390. And after we hear what John has up his sleeve in the next segment and what we talk about with school choice coming up in the following segment, we've got to unpack this. We've got to talk about this. I really want to understand. I mean, yeah, if you're a one-issue voter, what are you sacrificing? What are you leaving on the table to preserve the right to kill a baby? I mean, let's even say just to
Miami Marlins are here, not giving their fans much to be happy about as the only winless team in baseball, entering their matchup with the home opener. But on Wednesday, at least one patron found a pleasant experience at Lone Depot Park. Joel Franco documented an experience with the Marlins' new $52 ticket. It's all you can eat in their loss to the Angels. He began the night with a burger and a chili dog in the first inning. As the game went on, Franco tried everything from nachos, cookies, peanuts, popcorn, till he got through all the items on the menu. Well, the only issue could be a problem if things go poorly when the Marlins cut it off after the seventh inning. One of the more exciting things that happened for the Marlins so far, the best thing, I think, probably Mike Trout the other night, hitting 2 home runs. Not to be outdone on opening day, Redbirds have some new food goodies. The Slinger Dog, one of many new food items, a 1/3 pound all-beef hot dog topped with freshly made hash browns, taco meat, and 2 sunny-side-up fried eggs.
Whoa.
Food truck, that's a place folks like at Bush. They have a brisket mac and cheese, jalapeno popper sandwiches with smoked pork confit, and gooey butter cakes. So the question is, remember that pitchers never, Cardinal pitchers never bring full-size sandwiches to the bullpen, only sliders. And now you know the rest of that story.
Where's that everyone knows it's windy song right now?
But
Amen. Play ball.
it's better than the terrible Venn diagram jokes that you two nerds over there have been giggling about for the last half hour.
She's showing me these funny Venn diagram jokes. They're hilarious.
They're so bad.
No, they're so good.
Listen, as a lover of dad jokes, puns, whatever you want to call it, okay, I don't ever want to hear you guys give me grief over my dad jokes ever again after knowing that you guys like Venn diagram jokes.
They're funny.
Nerd alert.
Now, in our Star Trek analogy, it's a fun thing to ask y'all.
Is it?
But, you know,
They can't relate.
so someone said that, okay, if I was talking about, I've got my shocks here. I got my shocks. I'll put those on.
You were wearing them. They are weird looking.
Oh, they're good.
They look expensive.
See, they go right on your cheekbone in front, and then that conducts the sound.
Here, let me give you the close-up.
See, look at that. And that way, if you wear hearing aids, and many people do, I have in the canal hearing aids, so you don't even know they're there. I mean,
So it's not like shooting.
We can tell when they're there.
no, it's conducting through the bone.
So, like, if I get really close to you, I wouldn't be able to hear what's.
You might if I had it cranked up, but no, you wouldn't be able to. But it's really cool. They work great, and they're also if you need to hear the ambient sound in whatever setting you're doing. So, like in the office setting, they're great. If someone else is talking to you, or if you're on the phone, you can hear that. It's great.
Does it actually shut off? Because the new
They're Bluetooth.
AirPods are supposed to do that, I think. That if someone starts talking to you, it's supposed to dial the sound down so you can hear.
I don't know. I'm not that fancy. I don't know about that. But they're good.
Do
But
they
anyway.
make wireless ones? Because I don't think I could walk around with a silver band halfway around my head.
Well, no, they are wireless, but how else are you going to hold them against your zygomatic bone, your cheekbone? That's your
Your what?
zygomatic bone. They call it your temporal bone, but that's wrong. The temporal bone is up here, like in your temples. But the zygomatic bone is right here, and that's where they rest, right up here on the top of your zygoma.
It couldn't like loop around your ear and sit there.
Yeah, they just like this. See, look at how.
But have you
They
seen?
don't bother
she
you.
doesn't like the band around the back and mess up your hair.
Wow, we got some news coming from Redbirds
mess up
ahead of
your
this
hair.
opening day.
Well, I don't have to worry about that.
He doesn't have his headphones
yeah.
on, John. Hang on.
John's saying we
Okay.
got some Cardinals news here.
Yeah.
Oh, what's the Cardinals?
There we
news?
go.
What's
The Cardinals news is we've just heard they're bringing Chewbacca up from AAA Springfield Cardinals. They expect him to be the Wookiee of the year.
Oh, yeah, that was good.
John, now that's
Knocked it out of the park, John.
but up. There you go. We need to talk about. So someone texted us and say if I was joking about being, in the old Star Trek, in the second or third generation of that, when the Borg were turning humans into like hybrid robot humans by implanting various things on them, and Jean-Luc Picard finally started. He became a Borg. He had things implanted. That's what I feel like. And then someone said, well, Stephanie's number, does that make Stephanie number one? Which, if you're a Star Trek fan, you know what that means. What would that make Hannah and John and Brian? Hannah, would you be, you'd have to change gender, but you would be like the engineer, the chief engineer, Scotty. Oh, she's losing power, Captain. Remember Scotty?
Oh, so I have to change my gender to be in control?
Well, you
okay.
wouldn't. No. Just to fit.
Not doing you much good around here.
Oh, don't worry. No, you don't need to change any gender. We well know who's in control, Miss Hannah. She lets us know that very often. She is the controller of all things microphone and air.
Yeah, next time you try to do a Venn diagram joke, I'm cutting you all off.
Well, that's why you should vote for Hannah, because when all of the chaos is going on, Hannah is in charge. We keep the ship moving forward, even when some of us...
steady hand at the helm.
That's right. Even when some of us, Stephanie, try to lead us across to a different water. I'm kidding. I usually am guilty of that.
I was going to say, that's kind of the...
I'm usually guilty of that.
The other way around.
Make sure you get on the Best of Columbia. three big buckets of expertise: school choice, transparency, and radical ideology. Lots of great resources there. Ginny, thanks for being with us, and happy April.
Oh, good morning, Randy. Thanks for having me.
Hey, we wanted to talk about some things in terms of what you are seeing as you survey the landscape nationally and whether it reflects what disappointingly happened, at least in a couple of a local school board election. The one conservative anti-radical ideology candidate was soundly defeated by two others. One's an incumbent. In St. Louis, about a dozen or maybe a baker's dozen of more conservative-oriented candidates, even in conservative areas, went down to defeat. It was disappointing. Some people are saying it was a turnout problem. But are you seeing that around the country, or are there some brighter spots than here?
Well, I have to tell you, Randy, there's 14,000 public school districts around the country, and that means about 95,000 school board members. And that means it's hard to know what the trends are. I think that we develop a narrative. Hey, look, there's a parental rights movement, and there's a rise in conservative candidates and a takeover of school boards. And then a year or two later, when the unions rise up and throw their power at the elections and the endorsements and put all their money behind their candidates, oh, look, the union-endorsed candidates are winning. So the trends are hard to know. School board elections are often very local, but across the board, we always have to keep an eye on what the unions are doing behind the scenes, because study after study shows that union-backed school board candidates win. That's just what they do. They win in they win in California, yep. They win in Florida, they win in Democratic-controlled areas, they win in Republican-controlled areas. The unions have the money, the power, the ability to drive turnout. They tell their teachers how to vote. The teachers tell their spouses how to vote, and the union-backed candidate wins.
I think you just nailed it. That's what we're hearing anecdotally from people that are closer to those individual races. That while it appeared like those conservative candidates were getting some traction, having some momentum, the teachers' unions absolutely come in, often with money from outside the area, mm-hmm. and yes, the state, to just, it becomes overwhelmingly an information war, and money these days wins because you pummel people who don't really either know or are not as interested with information, and they believe it hook, line, and sinker. You wrote a nice piece on Town Hall on April Fool's, and it wasn't an April Fool's piece. It was a very serious piece about the harmful wedge that's being driven between parents and emotionally vulnerable children. Tell us about it.
Well, honestly, Randy, this was a speech that I'd given at the Heritage Foundation a couple years ago when I first started talking about the harms of gender ideology. And I thought, you know what, we've made progress in exposing the harm of men in women's sports and women's spaces, in prisons. We've raised awareness among parents and community members about gender ideology, lessons and materials in schools, how we're giving picture books to children, teaching them that they could be a girl, a boy, both, or neither, teaching them that doctors could guess their gender, and sometimes the doctors guess wrong. So I feel like we've made progress exposing what's going on in K-12 education, but there's more to be done in exposing these pernicious gender support plans. And an analysis by Parents Defending Education has found that over 1,000 school districts across the country have these secretive gender support plans in place. That means that at a minimum, millions of students are impacted by this plan, this policy that's been crafted by a template that's been crafted by activists that schools use when a child says, you know what, I want a new name, I want a new gender, I want to go to a different bathroom, I want to go to different locker rooms, I want to sleep in a different room, for when we do overnight trips. And a secretive plan is crafted page after page, writing out, okay, will we tell the parent? No. Well, what is this child's new name? What is this child's new gender identity? And it goes sometimes into the child's record, but often not, because parents should have access to the child's record under federal law, but they keep these secretive plans to keep this information from parents, pushing a child down a path of social transition and then likely medical transition, all hidden behind the parent's back.
Missouri House is working on a bill right now, Ginny, that's a DEI bill, and it's also getting some attention at the higher education levels. The colleges in the state say, the DEI enriches the educational experience, while the bill sponsor says DEI is fundamentally racist. Your take on that?
Well, I'd say DEI is on its way out. Don't you think? Like, we're seeing tech schools in Texas, schools in Florida just saying, never mind. I think I saw something earlier this week that said the University of Texas at Austin DEI deans were told, go back to being a professor. We're done with this whole DEI charade. So if the legislature in state after state does the right thing and says, we're done, everybody's got to go back to doing real work, we can see the country getting back on the right track when it comes to this stuff.
We're talking with Ginny Gentles, director of the Education Freedom Center at Independent Women's Forum. That's IWF.org.
Well, in Missouri, I think we've been making progress on the education freedom side. We've got a lot of hearings going on, a lot of big bills, but we're just facing the enormity of the resources of the incumbent school district. And we just saw yesterday, I guess the PIO of our Columbia Public Schools sent out something, basically an alert that you would see from some sort of advocacy organization that says, oh, this bill is in committee. It's going to be horrible for Columbia. You must do something, essentially to all the public school staff.
Yeah.
And I mean, for the rest of us, I mean, how do you combat against that? And I think, and you can speak more broadly about what's happened in other nations. We're still hearing those same arguments of it's going to damage existing public schools, where we've seen these changes in other states, and that's not what's happened.
Did we lose you, Ginny?
I'm still here.
Oh, there you go.
I'm still here.
So, I mean, can you talk about the evidence in the other states and how we, as just regular citizens, combat against these public school districts that have just enormous resources, enormous staff, and oftentimes are some of the larger organizations in our communities just to protect their own interests?
Well, I did see the report that you had the school board member, or was it a staff member, putting out anti-school choice messages, and obviously that needs to be investigated. They're not supposed to be using government resources to lobby against legislation, and how insane that they're lobbying against legislation or putting out warnings against legislation that is absolutely student-centered, student-focused. Let's do what's best for kids. I think Missouri is on the right track with having passed the education savings account bill back in 2021. The expansions need to happen, both in charter schools, both in the ESA. If Missouri is going to be competitive with other states, universal school choice is on the march across the country. Over 11 states have universal or near universal school choice programs, education freedom programs. So it's going to be strange for the states who listen to the pro-union and the pro-bureaucracy advocates and ignore the needs of families and the needs of students and don't expand education freedom. So it's time to move forward. What is the bill is Senate Bill 727 with some of these provisions that expand education freedom. I see good things happening when that bill passes.
It was even it got into quite a flap at the last regional economic development meeting here in Columbia. The school superintendent, the Columbia Public School superintendent, just sort of went crazy. I mean, they were having an economic forum. That's what this is, a monthly discussion. And he just went on a big screed about how charter schools are going to destroy the Columbia Public Schools. And I guess he even mentioned some partnership between the Missouri Department of Conservation. They have a nature school, which is a great opportunity. And all of Boone County, of which Columbia is the main city, of course. But any student in some grade up can go there and take a field trip, and they can experience that. But he tried to imply that, using that as a cudgel. Well, you never know what kind of programs might have to go. I mean, it's just it's just unseemly, Ginny. And if it's going on here, it's going on all across the country.
It is, but I think that there are plenty of places where the legislators and often the governors know that they've got to do the right thing. You need really strong strong backbones to be like, you know what, that's nonsense. It's fear mongering. It's not the truth. A lot of times it's just not true. There are how many thousands of charter schools across the country, 7,800 charter schools across the country, and yet public education, traditional public education, residentially assigned public education still exists. The fear mongering is it's lunacy. But one thing that everybody needs to keep in mind is that the school districts were drunk on federal money, federal supplemental funding in the form of elementary and secondary school emergency relief funds, ESSER funds. The federal government gave them $190 billion the last few years, and that money's drying up. Coupled with that, public school enrollment across the board is on the decline because there's a bit of a baby bust. There just aren't as many kids. Plus, families have been pulling their kids out of the public school system. So with enrollment declines and the end of this $190 billion in federal ESSER funds, the school districts are really worried about their budgets. You're going to hear a lot about budget cuts. They aren't real cuts. It's just that the federal money's gone now, the supplemental federal money. And so anytime something like school choice creeps along, they are worried because they're already facing some budget crunches. So I'd say brace yourself for like a real fever pitch of hysteria when it comes to opposing choice, because in addition to fear mongering, they actually are fearful about how to manage their budgets.
So to metaphorize this in a Star Wars way, the Empire is going to strike back, right? I mean, I think that they feel existentially threatened, but they haven't been responsible. The Show Me Institute, who's been a real school choice advocate here in Missouri, just had a beautiful Susan Pendergrass there does the education work.
Love Susan.
Susan. She wrote this thing just several days ago, Missouri Public Education in 4 graphs, and it really mirrors what the Reason Foundation has found nationally. Enrollment down, teachers up, spending way up, achievement down. I mean, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to say, hey, if you keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome, I think Einstein called that crazy, right? And so something's got to change. Something's got to change.
Well, to go back to our teacher union-backed school board election conversation, when you elect the school board members that are backed by the unions, what happens is that you'll see a bump up in salaries, but you don't see a bump up in student achievement. So, proof point after proof point shows that no, we can't keep doing the same thing. You're absolutely right, Randy. Like, if you keep electing union-backed school board members, if you keep funding things at greater and higher levels,
Yesterday, the S&P closed up 0.11%. The Dow mirrored that on the downside. And then the NASDAQ closed up 0.23%. So not terrible.
No.
It is looking up this morning, though, Randy.
Good.
Everything is in the green quite significantly. The futures are up over 0.5%, S&P even more than that, and NASDAQ up 0.91% right now as far as the futures go. So it could be a good day. Yesterday, of course, was a very good day for those of us here at Zimmer headquarters, our good friends. And I also, and it was a good day for nerds. And I found someone, Hannah, that might even be nerdier than Randy and I. But yesterday, our good friends over at McDonald's dropped off a little treat for us. And if you check out our Wake Up Facebook page, you can see a photo of all of us.
Which that post kind of blew up. I was
I came home and took a beating on that one.
I'm sure.
Oh,
man.
you took a beating on the post as well, just by the way.
Oh, did I?
Yeah.
I didn't get a chance to check
So
it out.
McDonald's is back with their bagel sandwiches, which were they have been off menu since about 2020, since about COVID when they kind of slimmed their menu down. But now it's back. The bacon, egg, and cheese, sausage, egg, and cheese, and steak, egg, and cheese bagel sandwiches. And you can see us smiling real big. Randy got in trouble. But I liked this comment. I think it was from Robert. And he was like, if you all would follow these steak, egg, and cheese bagel Facebook pages, you would know they've been back for a minute. Well,
I know. I felt like, well, excuse me.
excuse me. But Robert is not the only one. So apparently the Facebook group Where's My McDonald's Bagel boasts more than 12,000 members who discuss where you can get these bagels because they're actually on a state-by-state basis. Not everyone has them. So apparently we should feel really lucky that we have them in mid-Missouri.
And they interrupted our training session to feed us, no less.
They did. But even more nerdier than just the Facebook page is members of this fan club have created a public spreadsheet, a public Excel spreadsheet called U.S. McDonald's breakfast bagel locations that you can go in and update. So if you're worried about whether your McDonald's has the bagels or not, you can check this public Facebook. So I think nerds save the world. I think they have saved the world. I think they're going to save the world. And gosh darn it, if you can have a spreadsheet that helps other folks out about where you can get a McDonald's bagel, I'm here for it. But more largely in the breakfast market, they do say that, cereal has taken a nosedive as far as markets go. I don't know if that's more health perspective. At least, you should tell Helene.
Price point.
Yeah, price point. It's expensive, but at least for Helene's purposes, you were having protein, right? And that's why, I kind of discourage my kids. I'm like, you need actual protein for breakfast, and these bagels, if you're
There seems to be quite a frenzy over the McDonald bagel, muffins and so forth. So some people like the
bagel muffins,
bagel sandwich,
bagel sandwich muffin. I don't know, muffaletta. I don't know what bagel with some of they have a sauce on it that was different though. I wasn't used to having the sauce on there. It was good.
See, that's how I remember them.
Yeah. I don't remember them because I'd never had one because I haven't been allowed to have one till yesterday. And it was great. I had the bacon. You had the steak.
Yes.
And then we also hear, is there a sausage one too? Did you have sausage?
I had the sausage one.
Okay. So it seems like just looking at the Facebook comments, a steak wins. Steak seems to get the most. By far. But the interesting thing is now, Jack. We should call Jack Poopy Pants here. He says,
no, Jack is my favorite.
Is the steak grass-fed, Randy? You know how important that is. I could just see him with that, eating grin on his face.
Yeah, and did you see my response to his text?
He said, yeah, they're $42 a piece. Right. Now, I did say, I said most of our beef is corn finished, hard to get or afford or get properly aged grass finished, but it's an aspirational goal. That's fair. I mean, I want a Lamborghini too, but it's not going to happen. I wish I could afford grass finished in the right way. It has to be aged properly, but that's a separate issue.
Goodness.
So Helene saw that. Thank you very much, Hannah. She saw it, and I come home, and she says, okay, mister, you got some penance to pay now.
Uh-oh.
We don't need all the details.
Not that kind of penance. But you know what? When she makes me pay penance, it's a reward because you know what she did? She took this beautiful. First of all, she said, take off your clothes. Put on your workout clothes and your Peloton shoes and get on the bike.
I think that's how the Eric Greitens story started too.
Now,
Changed into this outfit for a hot workout.
She didn't send you to the basement, did she?
Brian and John, I'm trying to tell a legitimate story here. And do you notice it's the ladies that go south, right? Now, if we did some kind of a blue detour on this kind of a story, we'd be called misogynists and chauvinists and pigs. But no, the ladies go south. My wife was preparing a beautiful, she dusts some flounder fillets with cornstarch and just in a little bit of olive oil. It's like Dover sole. It's the most beautiful dish. And then she takes, I think it's called brunoise. She cuts these little peppers up into just perfect 1/8-inch cubes. I mean, you could put a tape measure on. They're perfect because she sautés that with some spinach. It was a beautiful thing. And then I had just a little bit of chickpea pasta, just enough to keep my pasta, needs satisfied, with the garlic and oil. And I went out and got on the Peloton. When I took off my clothes, I put on the workout clothes, ladies.
You have like a onesie, like biker, like a neon biking.
No, they're short pants.
How short are they?
And then she took a picture of me and said, "You're looking pretty manly man on there." I thought, well, there you go. I'm working out, baby. There you go.
In your spandex cycling outfit?
Well, I had the little shorts on that I've been accused of. One time I was wearing them on the air early in the morning on my Saturday show.
Whoa.
And they're the little short gym shorts like we used to wear in the 80s, but they're little
Those
cotton.
are making a comeback.
And you know what she said? My producer said before the show one time, she said, Are you wearing pants? I said, no, these are my workout pants.
You're like, I see a lot of that white meat way up high. I don't like men's size or
Do you like the white meat or you like the thigh meat?
I like longer shorts.
Yeah, the doctor, the fly goes in the front, though.
Yeah. My husband played rugby for many years, so I am used to seeing the men in the shorts.
I couldn't find my cycling shorts with the chamois crotch. The chamois crotch is important because it helps protect everything and it absorbs moisture. If you're a biker, you know what I mean. If you're a cyclist, you should have nice spandex shorts with. But I toughed it through because she made me pay a price for eating a darn bagel sandwich.
I have to know with what instructor. Who's your favorite instructor?
I like Leanne Hansby.
Oh, she's British.
British.
Right? Yeah.
She's British. And you know what I like her? Because she's an ex-dancer. And I just like the way she sort of grooves.
She's also kind of pretty.
I didn't ever look at that. It's the musical selections.
That's why I like Dennis.
You like, yeah?
He's an older instructor, but I used to ride with Dennis a lot.
Yeah, so we
He's
all have our
good-looking.
favorite instructors. But I did a really vigorous little 15, 20-minute ride. It made me feel good, pumped me up. I felt like I probably didn't work off the calories of the bagel sandwich, but it was okay. I can't believe the way you people go south, trying to have a wholesome dinner and a wholesome workout, and Hannah's over there going, "Oh my gosh, I can't put TMI." No,
I was just warning you that we didn't need to hear all that.
All right, now Brian, what's going on with that crash over on 70? Has that been cleared?
It's been, well, they're still out on the scene. The good news is, as I've referenced in the 8 and 8:30 news, and I did a text alert as well for all the folks that get the text alerts. The both lanes have opened. I talked to the Boone County Joint Communications. They have reopened, but you're still going to see debris off to the side of the road.
Yeah.
The tractor trailer crashed overnight, ballpark 133-mile marker, and then a car came down the high. I mean, very soon afterwards, a car slammed into the trailer. Truck driver not hurt. The woman in the car suffered moderate injuries, according to our news partner, KMIZ. So she is hospitalized. Probably going to be several hours before we get a crash report from the Highway Patrol. But I do have an updated story, 93.9theeagle.com. I also want to mention, Randy, here something I know a lot of our listeners are interested in this. This ties into both KWS and the Eagle. John and I have both covered it. Hannah actually saw this chase the other day and some of the chaos on the bridge. The court documents, and I'll have this up after 9 o'clock. I've been waiting to see if we get a mugshot of the suspect. I assume he's in the hospital after he crashed, but you've got a 30-year-old suspect, broad daylight, Election Day, Tuesday, 1 p.m, accused of trying to carjack a woman with a small child in the vehicle at the break time, full of people, 1 p.m. And he told the little girl, according to the court document, "We're leaving." This woman's kind of
right there at that busy crossroads there as you head into
You can't hardly get out of there. The traffic. Know. That's how brazen
Conley
this guy
and
is.
whatever that other road is.
Yes, it'd be Conley and Brickton.
Wow.
And the woman's kind of a tough, basically, from the court document. She picks up an alternator from the back of her car, and she almost hit the guy in the head with the alternator. So that's pretty. I'm impressed. Then his guy goes down a couple blocks. We believe it would be either at or near Walmart. It's so redacted I can't tell, but it's on Conley. 20 minutes later, they're looking for this guy, and Lopez, the suspect, who has ties to the country of Mexico, no ID in Missouri, has a Mexican ID card, and he lives in Camdenton.
Does he have one of those Kansas City ID cards?
Not one of those. But he is accused. This is how full of people in the parking lot. He knocks on a guy's door, says something to him, literally pulls this guy out of his vehicle, drags him into the busy parking lot, either Walmart or Sam's, somewhere in that area, can't tell because it's redacted, beats him multiple times, punches him in the face, and a Good Samaritan has a gun in his car, sees all this, gets the gun out of his car, holds it into the air, and this guy gets scared and drives off and leads police on a 30-mile chase. I mean, this is just absolute chaos.
I think we got winners of the week there. That guy and the woman in the car at the break time.
Yeah, I mean, she deserves a lot of credit, but that is, and I know people are going to ask, what about the mugshot? We don't have a mugshot right now, folks, because he's in the jail, but I'm just going to assume, and I'll confirm this, he probably is in the hospital under heavy guard right now because he crashed into a fence, so I don't have a picture. Once we get it, we'll put it up. But he is
poor guy.
He is
crashed
charged
into a fence.
Yeah. But I'm just saying we will get questions. Why don't you have a picture? We run mugshots of whoever it is.
Speaking of a picture, I was just texted a photo from Mrs. Tobler.
Oh, no. Please don't go
Please
there.
post that one on the Facebook page.
Oh, please don't go there. Look at that. It's a great picture. Look at that guy there.
Wow.
Look at his little shot. You see the little white dot?
The look on your face, you look scared.
I'm not scared. I'm just trying to stay with the program. If Leanne says turn your cadence up, put the resistance up, I do what Leanne says.
She's showing a picture there.
Oh, there you go. Look at that. I'm serious-minded when I'm on my Peloton. Well, okay, so Brian, when are we going to know if this guy's an illegal? I mean, I got to know.
Well, it's not. those are hard to necessarily confirm because he's got a name that's fairly common. So we're not going to. What we know are from the court documents. He has a Mexican. What is the term here? He has a Mexican ID card. He did not have a Missouri ID. He refused to tell them where he lived, according to the court document. Never a good sign. They're going to find that out anyway. He lives in Camdenton. So it probably would be in a court hearing or an arraignment. They may have to bring in an interpreter, but the court docs are so redacted on both that, and I know people are going to ask that question. We'll answer it once we can, but it's just it's so redacted. It may be in there, but and then he could be legally here. The bottom line is there's just a lot of questions about everything that happened.
Okay.
But very brazen.
It says if you look at it, Matt Nichols has texted. If you look at his charges on the 0700 report, it shows a federal immigration detainer. What does that mean?
Well, that would mean that he had a detainer. I did not. That was not on the sheriff's roster last night, and even early this morning. It would have been posted after 7. We've had the crash. That would mean that he could have some immigration issues. Matt may be able to share more.
Okay.
But again, that is on top of Randy, whether he is an illegal or not. The bigger question right now for authorities is they want him behind bars. They don't want him out on any sort of bond because he allegedly tried to carjack 2 people in broad daylight.
A woman with a child.
Correct. And this is not 1 in the morning. This is 1 in the afternoon.
Okay.
I mean, that is just, I quite frankly, and I don't remember anything that brazen in a while.
Well, and so that happened locally. Anyone see the story out of Springfield from yesterday?
Yeah.
A sex offender forced their way onto a school bus with 13 middle school kiddos. Luckily, the kids had enough sense to jump out the emergency exit door in the back of the bus.
Terrifying.
They have footage from, I'm assuming, like Ring doorbells maybe, of the kids just running off the bus.
Imagine the terror those kids experienced.
But the sex offender who forced their way onto the bus and took the keys from the bus driver, so they were stuck, was in a standoff with police in a nearby home for like 8 hours. Again, broad daylight, middle of the day.
And we'll have a voicer from Don coming up probably in either 9 or 10, but that's a concern. We have corrections officers listening that just heard Hannah's story that work in the prison system. I worked in the prison system for a couple of years, as you know, and the sex offenders, they're primarily at the Farmington prison, but they're some of them in the maximum security, depending on their crimes or whatever. I will tell you without going into detail that my first or second day they took me because there was an execution, and I went into the Farmington prison. You would not believe the vulgar, nasty things those sex offenders were saying to the director of the Department of Corrections and the warden and I. They had no fear of him. They had no fear of me. They didn't know who I was. I had somebody yell at me I was Mr. FBI man because I was in a suit. I was not an FBI agent. They were taunting me.
Wow.
But they are some of them can be
heinous.
Some of them can be rehabilitated. Many of them cannot, and some of them actually have to be civilly committed. I don't know about this case in Springfield, but that is brazen.
with Marsh that said, so I think for most of our law-abiding citizens in Columbia, they're safe in their community while they are going about their day-to-day lives. I think we just proved that wrong with your story.
You're right. I was going to say my wife wants me to go and pick up a thing or two at the exclusive members-only club in Columbia, right in that neighborhood. And I'm frankly, I'm not sure I want to go there. I got to tell you.
Yeah, while our mayor is in climate change conferences, she's saying it's safe, but a couple people there over by Glen County Road just
wow,
it wasn't safe.
Yeah, it's turning into a killing zone. I'm telling you. Hey, thanks a lot, Randy. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
All righty. Yeah, man, I'm telling you. Where's maybe Mayor Buffalo lives in a gated community? I'm just not sure. I mean, maybe she feels safe. Do you feel safe? Does everyone feel safe in light of these reports? I don't know. Hi, Steve. What's up?
Yes, sir. You were talking about the child molesters. Those people cease to be human when they do that. So what would be the problem with just killing them? Just throw a rope over a limb.
Well,
I would not do it again.
I mean, that may violate the cruel and unusual punishment because they didn't kill anyone, but I don't know. But it raises the bigger question, Steve, and thank you for the call. The question on the table is, look, back in the day in colonial America and even back in through the 1800s, there were these things called stocks and pillories where people who committed crime as a general deterrent were in full public view in the town square. Their legs were bound in wooden boards that bound their legs and sometimes their head too, and they couldn't move, and they were on full display and they were shamed. I mean, there's the individual deterrence factor. I mean, they probably aren't going to pull that again, but what should this guy who tried to carjack a woman and her child and then did it again, if were it not for a citizen that was armed and brandishing a gun, he probably would have succeeded there.
Probably.
Is there a role? And I don't want to hear it doesn't work. I read all this stuff with the liberal academics. Well, research shows deterrence doesn't work. That's because it hasn't been shown to kids in high school. These things should be publicly shown. This guy should be drawn and quartered, and it should be shown in the Columbia public schools. I maintain this. And if a murderer is caught cold-blooded murdering someone, there should be I'm sorry, Jen Bukowski, if you're listening. I know what you say. They deserve self-defense, due process, and I love you, Jen.